All right, we're back here with a quick one, and this is another video on my hormone overclocking theory. So this is my fourth time recording one of these videos. However, I just wanted to go over that there's going to be a difference in this one, and that's just the fact that I'm not going to be doing as much of an overview on these individual compounds. I'm just going to briefly go over them, but I'm more explaining the synergy of this hormone overclocking theory that I have, and providing studies as well. So without further ado, let me start to explain what hormone overclocking actually is. So the whole idea is that instead of taking steroids, you can overclock your own body's natural production of hormones to get a similar result. Now, obviously, I'm not claiming that you'll get anywhere near steroid result, but we're hoping to aim for something close. And so my base stack consists of these three compounds. We have MK677, proviron, and enclomiphene. And now proviron is highlighted green because that's the last one I'm going to talk about, and I would recommend sticking around for this because this is pretty much what makes the entire stack come together synergistically and work. And before you comment something like about peptides, I know that any growth hormone peptide could replace MK677, and I know that something like ECG could replace enclomiphene, but just for the sake of the video, I use these. This is the base hormone overclocking stack. So all these three compounds together are supposed to, and I theorize, increase testosterone, HGH, IGF-1, lower estrogen, and lower SHBG, which will lead to increased muscle mass, bone mass, recovery, libido, and masculine characteristics or sexual dimorphism. Now, right here I have a chart of a natural endocrine balance, and these numbers aren't actually based off any real blood work or any actual human. It's simply just a graph that I made to demonstrate what the stack is going to do and how it's going to work through compound to compound. So enclomiphene, what are we going to expect? Obviously, if you know what enclomiphene is, if you don't, go watch a video on it, but if you know what it is, selective estrogen receptor modulator, or SERM, it's going to increase your testosterone, which is also going to increase your estrogen, and then you also get an increase in free testosterone. And so it does this, it increases your testosterone through something called the negative feedback loop. So your base negative feedback loop is pretty much how your body controls your testosterone production. And it does this through the hypothalamus is going to release gonadotropin releasing hormone into the anterior pituitary. Then the anterior pituitary is then going to release LH and FSH, which will then go to the testes. And luteinizing hormone, or LH, in the testes will enter the Leydig cells, and that will make and account for testosterone production. FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, will relate to sperm production. Now that testosterone is going to obviously circulate through your body, and it's going to run into aromatase enzymes, which testosterone hits aromatase and then turns into estradiol, which is just another name, I guess, for estrogen. So it'll turn into estradiol, which will then go back up to the brain, and your brain will read the level of estrogen that's in your body and decide how much LH and FSH to release from there, which will then obviously have a direct correlation with your testosterone level. So enclomiphene will attach to this and pretty much upregulate the negative feedback loop. So it attaches to your brain, and it will pretty much tell your brain that you're low on estrogen, which will upregulate the release of LH and FSH, which will upregulate testosterone production and spermatogenesis. Now, that testosterone will still hit aromatase in your body, so it'll still be turned into estradiol. However, still continue to be upregulated because of the enclomiphene. That's why we see an increase in estrogen as well. So a couple studies to go along with this I picked out were this one, reduced IGF-1 levels following clomiphene treatment for male hypogonadism. Now, I want to point out that something really that is important to look about, and that I am wary of, is that it says clomiphene treatment. There's an important distinction between clomiphene and enclomiphene, and that is that enclomiphene is a single isomer of clomiphene. Clomiphene is made up of both enclomiphene and zooclomiphene. So it relates, but should, I guess, be taken with a bit more of a grain of salt, because the study technically is not on just enclomiphene. So you see, I guess if we can look at this chart, pre-Clomiphene versus post-Clomiphene treatment, most of them, some had a rise in IGF-1, but majority had a drop. And we can see here that Clomiphene therapy can result in a significant reduction in serum IGF-1 levels in some treated hypogonadal men. So, I mean, it's saying some, and this is something that's been discussed quite a while for enclomiphene, on whether it actually does decrease IGF-1 or not. So I would do your own research and come up with your own opinion on that. But this was another study I found that was interesting here. Testosterone restoration using enclomiphene citrate, so highlighting enclomiphene, in men with secondary hypogonadism, which hypogonadism is just your testes are not producing a lot of testosterone. They're significantly underproducing testosterone. So the first thing we have here is both transdermal testosterone and enclomiphene citrate decreased insulin-like growth factor 1 levels, but suppression was greater in the enclomiphene citrate group. And, obviously insulin-like growth factor 1, that's IGF-1, but conclusions, enclomiphene citrate increased serum LH and total testosterone. However, there is not blah, blah, blah. Enclomiphene citrate consistently increased serum total testosterone into the normal range and increased LH and FSH above the normal range. So I will link all the studies below so you can take a look at them yourself. But now, if we want to overclock our hormones, a decrease in IGF-1 and growth hormone isn't exactly ideal, which is why we have MK677. So you should already know what this is. It's a hunger hormone mimetic or a ghrelin mimetic, and this is going to raise our growth hormone and IGF-1 through attaching to ghrelin receptors in the brain, and this is going to increase recovery as well, kind of increase muscle mass, and then give improvements in hair, skin, and nails. So that's the loop, is ghrelin attaches to the brain, causing growth hormone release. And we see here that in this study around here, treatment with MK677 was associated with nearly a 50% increase in REM sleep and a decrease in REM latency. So that's your increased recovery. And then placebo versus actual group, we can see consistently that serum growth hormone levels raise within the MK677 groups. Now, in this next section, I'm going to talk, before I get into proviron, I want to talk about MK677 and enclomiphene, because that is a stack that's been talked about, but I don't think that it quite cuts it, and I'll say why. Because these are the three muscle growth pathways. We have myostatin, which is that gene that controls muscle growth. We have the androgen receptor, the AR, what testosterone binds to and androgen binds to. And then we have growth hormone, or IGF-1. So IGF-1 on its own, it's going to be a very weak one. So that's why I say take the increased muscle mass with a grain of salt. But then the androgen receptor, enclomiphene falls short because of this sex hormone binding globulin, which is a protein in your body that controls your free testosterone level, which controls muscle building, libido, energy, and mood. So if you see with enclomiphene, you will get an increase in free testosterone, but it's within the ratio that your body already has, and that's why it falls short of it. It's because estrogen raises as well, and so does sex hormone binding globulin. It will also raise. So there's this ratio that your body has, so that your body won't really enter too much of an anabolic state. And that's why when you inject steroids, you're just going way beyond super physiological levels that you're in such an anabolic state. However, sex hormone binding globulin will control this, and it's pretty much the main factor why I think enclomiphene falls short. So we're adding in proviron, which is a DHT derivative steroid. And this is the most interesting part about this stack by far, because don't let the word steroid kind of fool you. But pretty much proviron is very unique because it's going to lead to a decrease in estrogen and an increase in free testosterone. And that's because proviron has a lot of key differences that makes it super unique as a steroid. The first of which being it's not 17A alkylated, meaning it's not going to be nearly as liver toxic, so you don't really have to worry about liver toxicity with proviron. It lowers estrogen and controls estrogen, and it has a very high binding affinity for sex hormone binding globulin, which you can see right here in a study. Mesterolone, which by the way, mesterolone is another name for proviron, bound most avidly to sex hormone binding globulin, where most, it actually says right here, anabolic steroids in this tissue, actually it doesn't say that there, my bad, but obviously steroids act on the androgen receptor, right? That's the binding affinity, and stuff like SARMs as well. They have a high binding affinity to the androgen receptor. However, proviron has a very high binding affinity to SHBG. Here's another study. Mesterolone had no depressing effect on low or normal serum FSH or LH levels, but had a depressing effect on 25% if levels were elevated. There's no significant adverse effect on testosterone levels or on liver function. So that study pretty much backs up the claims of it's minimally suppressive. It's the 17A alkylation. You don't really have to worry about liver toxicity. Which, sorry, I'm completely jumbled here, but anyways, the trade-off is that it's not going to build muscle because it's not binding to the AR as strongly. So this isn't going to be a muscle builder. It is androgenic, so for some people you might want that, for some people you might not. That's the whole deepening of the voice side of steroids. For some acne, for some balding. It's not going to aromatize, which is really good, and it's minimally suppressive, which is really good. So the point of proviron, if I haven't made it clear, is to lower SHBG and lower estrogen. Proviron, we're adding that in there so that it will put your body in that anabolic state without compromising, your endogenous system. You're going to have enclomiphene spiking testosterone. You're going to have MK677 spiking growth hormone and IGF-1. And then you're going to have proviron controlling estrogen, as well as freeing up more of that testosterone from SHBG to bind to the androgen receptor. That's the whole point. So with these three together again, increased testosterone production, HGH, IGF-1, lower estrogen, lower SHBG, which will lead to increased muscle mass, bone mass, recovery, libido, and sexual dimorphism. Now, a couple of the side effects that I just thought I should list are the androgenicness of the androgenic side, I guess, of proviron, the minimally suppressive side of proviron, because although, it's not significant, I think it's still worth noting. Your decreased insulin sensitivity with MK677, and then the increased hunger with MK677, which could honestly also be a benefit on whatever your goal is. So this is the final little chart here, which will kind of show natural versus the hormone overclocking stack. And as you see, we're overclocking our production of testosterone, IGF-1, we're controlling our estrogen, and then we're raising our free testosterone. So that's the hormone overclocking theory that I have. Feel free to comment, feel free to take a look at the studies, give advice. I would love pretty much any advice you guys might have, but thank you for watching.